Welcome to the Sellin' Podcast with Jeffrey Greif. Jeffrey has spent more than 45 years in sales and marketing. And for more than 25 years, he's presented sales seminars from large corporations to small businesses, as well as teaching university students all about the pride and passion of sales. Now, he's sharing that knowledge and practical advice with you to fast-track your journey to sales success. Whether you're selling a product, a service, or ideas, this is the Sellin' Podcast. And now your host, Jeffrey Greif.
Vilfredo Pareto was a civil engineer and economist in the 1800s in Italy who came to understand that 80% of the wealth in Italy was held by 20% of the citizens, and that 20% of the wealth was held by 80% of the citizens. He also came to understand that 80% of the taxes in Italy were being paid by 20% of the citizens, and that 20% of the taxes in Italy was paid by 80% of the citizens. He also found that 80% of the land was owned by only 20% of the citizens, and that 20% of the land was owned by 80% of the citizens. Interesting, yes? That's exactly what Pareto thought. Interesting. Then one day, he noticed that in his garden, 80% of the pea pod plants in his garden produced only 20% of the yield of peas, and that 20% of the pea pod plants in his garden produced 80% of the peas. Then he observed that 20% of the ties he wore 80% of the time. And 80% of the ties that he wore them only 20% of the time. I've noticed that myself. I wear 20% of the ties that I own 80% of the time, and 80% of the ties that I own, I wear 20% of the time. The Pareto Principle applies to just about everything in our lives. 80% of the people we know, we see them 20% of the time. And 20% of the people we know, we see 80% of the time. Did you know that over the long term, about 80% of the S&P 500 index's returns are attributed to about 20% of the stocks in the index? And correspondingly, 20% of the S&P 500 index's returns comes from 80% of the stocks in the S&P 500 index. 20% of the events and the people who we know cause 80% of our problems. And 80% of the events and the people who we know cause 20% of our problems. 20% of the events and the people who we know cause 80% of our happiness. And 80% of the events and the people who we know cause 20% of our happiness. Did you know that 20% of healthcare costs are spent on 80% of the people? And 80% of healthcare costs are spent on 20% of the people. Let's go a little further with this. 20% of the podcasts that we all listen to, we listen to 80% of the time spent listening to podcasts. And 80% of the podcasts that we listen to them only 20% of the time. When reading emails, 20% of the emails we read take up 80% of our time when reading emails. 80% of the emails that we read take up 20% of our time when reading emails. Now you may ask, Jeffrey, what the heck has this got to do with sales? Well, everything. Understand that the Pareto Principle, also known as the Golden Ratio, also known as the 80-20 rule, is invaluable in sales and in business. I've included a short video in this episode's show notes from Brian Tracy on how he recommends applying the 80-20 rule for success in sales. We only have 24 hours to the day, and everyone has the same 24 hours. Understand that 20% of our tasks and activity produce 80% of the desired results. What makes successful people successful is that we focus our time on productive activity, and we don't spend too much time on unproductive activity. What makes the unsuccessful unsuccessful? It's primarily because they spend way too much time on unproductive activity and not enough time on productive activity. Focus your efforts and focus your resources on productive activity. Maximize your effectiveness in sales, business, and in life. In sales and in business, understand that 20% of your customers give you 80% of your business and profit, and that 80% of your customers give you 20% of your business and profit. I will give you a moment or two to let that sink in. Yes. 20% of your customers give you 80% of your business and your profit, and 80% of your customers give you only 20% of your business and profit. Focus on the 20% of your clients who give you 80% of your business. Here's a very valuable suggestion. This is what I do. Every quarter, I review my clients' volume of business and profit every quarter. And I do an analysis to find out who are the 20% of my clients who are giving me 80% of my business and profit. I focus 80% of my time and resources on the 20% of my clients that account for 80% of my profit. I focus 20% of my time and resources on the 80% of my clients that only account for 20% of my profit. Am I neglecting the 80%? Absolutely not. I keep in touch with them all, and I give them the very best service I can provide. And as their businesses grow, someday, perhaps, they will be amongst the 20% of my clients who give me 80% of my business. But for now, they only get the time, effort, and resources that they warrant. You should have the same consideration when contacting prospects. About 20% of your prospects will express some interest in your product or service. 80% of your prospects, for whatever reason, will not express any interest at all. Focus on the 20% who do seem interested. And speaking of prospecting, did you know that 80% of first purchases from new customers comes after the 7th contact with the prospect? And that less than 20% of salespeople keep calling after the 7th contact with prospects. Yes, 80% of salespeople stop calling on prospects after they've been rejected 7 or less times. So they give up. Guess what that means? Some of you already know what I'm about to say, yes? If 80% of initial orders, that is the first time orders, that come from prospects who have been called on for 7 or more times, and only 20% of salespeople continue to call on prospects 7 or more times, that means that 80% of the business is going to 20% of the salespeople. The salespeople like you and me who don't give up. We keep calling on the prospects. We keep learning about them. We keep learning about their business. We keep presenting sales presentations to them, and we get the lion's share of the business. I recently received a very large transaction from a new client who I have been calling on for more than 30 years. And you better believe I called on this new customer a heck of a lot more times than 7 times, more like 70 times or more than 100 times. I never give up, never. 30 years I'm calling on this guy, and when the opportunity came, he thought of you know who. Of course he did. I'm calling on him for 30 years. Who the else was he going to call? Heck, most marriages in the United States don't make it 10 years, and I'm calling on this guy for 30 years. Of course he thought of me. Let's move on to a very important consideration, especially when considering the 80-20 rule. Here's some advice. A very small percentage of your clients are giving you the overwhelming majority of your company's problems. Consider getting rid of them. I know it's hard to walk away from any business, but think of it this way. Your few problem clients, those who are the potential liability, the constant complainers, those who take up much too much time of your office staff. I know it's hard to walk away from any business, but think of it this way. You have to get rid of those small minority of problem clients. Your few problem clients are taking valuable time and resources away from your many quality clients. Get rid of these poor quality clients so that your firm and you can provide better and better service to your good clients, your quality clients. Who are the clients? Think of it. Who are the clients who are draining the time and resources away from your quality clients to the point where it's just not worth it? Get rid of them. It's only a handful. And as I'm saying this, you're thinking of some clients who you need to get rid of. Don't be rude to them. Just stop calling on them. Give them the telephone number of one of your competitors and let them drive your competitors crazy. And when applying the 80-20 rule to your office, as far as the people who work at your company is concerned, believe me when I tell you, 20% of your company's employees account for 80% of the problems at your company. These are the minority of employees who are causing the majority of problems at the firm. These are the poor quality employees who create the mistakes. They have the typos, the mistakes, the poor customer service, the laziness, the irresponsibility, those who get into the office late and leave early and have bad attitudes. Fire these people immediately. I've been around long enough to know these poor quality employees, these people are a cancer on your company. They never improve. They will destroy your business. Fire them today. You know who I'm talking about. Fire them today. This reminds me of the Jack Welch employee matrix that he made famous. Jack Welch said there are 4 types of employees and managers based on 2 very important considerations: results and values. Employees and managers, number 1. Those employees and managers who deliver results and share the company's values. They should be highly rewarded and generously promoted. Employees and managers, number 2. Those who share values but do not deliver results. Keep them and train them as best as possible, hoping that while they retain the same values, eventually they will deliver results. Employees and managers, number 3, those who deliver results but do not share the company's values. Appreciate them for the results that they deliver to the company. However, you got to be careful with these employees. They may do damage to the culture of the organization. Employees and managers, number 4, those who neither deliver value nor share the company's values. Fire them immediately. They will not improve. Fire them. Now let's move on to the really great employees at the firm. And that's the 20% of the company's employees that account for 80% of the success of the firm. The great customer service. These are the employees that give really great customer service. They care. They have loyalty. They go above and beyond to serve the customers and the prospects. These are the rare ones, the optimists, the gritty hard workers. Give them everything they ask for. They are the backbone of your organization. Give them all the love and loyalty and money and promotions and recognition that your company can give them. These are the employees that will make your company thrive in good economic times and survive during the difficult economic times. All right, let's move on to sales meetings. I wasn't sure whether I should include this or not, but I will. I just have to. When your sales manager calls a sales meeting, understand 80% of the time spent at sales meetings is a waste of time. I'm sorry to say it, but it's true. Sometimes these sales meetings where you're talking about what people did during the weekend and what they did on their vacation, 80% of the time spent at a sales meeting is a waste of time. However, 20% of the time spent at a sales meeting contains very valuable content. Here's the key. Try not to kill yourself during the 80% of the time spent attending a sales manager's meeting that is a waste of time, so that you can learn some valuable information during the 20% of the sales meeting that may just possibly provide you with valuable content that you can use to enhance your sales efforts. I just had to say it. 20% of sales meetings contain valuable content that you can use to enhance your sales efforts. As a salesperson, I highly recommend spend some time, be deliberate, perhaps as little as 20 minutes every quarter or every year, and consider what are the 20% of your sales efforts that lead to 80% of your success. Take out a journal and write down what are the 20% of your sales efforts that lead to 80% of your success. Or what could be the 20% of your sales efforts that could or should lead to 80% of your future success in sales. Prioritize your efforts. What is the cause and effect in your business and in your sales efforts? How can you continue to improve, maximize your efficiency, optimize your effectiveness? Write it down and focus on improving that strategy of your sales efforts to improve upon and be more successful in sales. What are the 20% of your sales efforts that lead to 80% of your success? Very important consideration. There are a couple of books written about the 80-20 rule that I've read through, but I don't recommend reading them. In fact, one of them was written by a guy whose name I couldn't pronounce, starts with a Z. I bought this guy's book and was reading it on vacation on a beach. And after the first couple of chapters, I noticed there were 3 or 4 typos. And I ripped up that book into 100 pieces. My beautiful bride thought I was out of my mind. But I saw several typos, and I ripped up the book. If any author and editor and publisher can't publish a book without typos, it tells me they don't care enough about the message of the book, so why should I care? The teaching of this Selling podcast episode and the video content in Brian Tracy's video, linked in the show notes to this episode, is enough for you to understand that in sales and in business and in life, focus on that vital 20% of your efforts that will result in 80% of the successful outcome in sales and in life. What is the most important message of this episode? It's this. I want you to take the time. I need you to be deliberate. Focus. Stephen Covey, author of The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, wrote, "The main thing is to keep the main thing the main thing." I printed that out and I put it on the wall in my office. The main thing is to keep the main thing the main thing. Absolutely. I want you to take the time, be deliberate, focus, do an analysis to determine who are the 20% of your clients who give you 80% of your business and your profit, and spend more time and resources giving them the very best service that you can, and ask them for referrals. Spend less time and resources on the 80% of your clients who are only giving you 20% of your business and profit. Doesn't mean to neglect them. You're still spending time with them, but you're spending less time with them. Focus your time on the 20% of your clients who are giving you 80% of your profit. And let's take this one step further. The 80% of the 80% of your clients, that's the 64% of your clients who only give you 20% of the 20% of your firm's profit. That's 4%. 4% of your business and your profit, don't spend much time at all with these people. That's right. 64% of your clients are only giving you 4% of your business and your profit. Don't spend much time at all with these people unless you have some strong reason to believe that somehow, some way, someday, they just may someday be a profitable client. Otherwise, move on. Focus your time and resources more productively. That's with the 20% of your clients who give you 80% of your business. But also, let's take that one step further in an analysis of your most profitable clients. That's the 20% of the 20% of your clients. That's the top 4%, who account for 80% of 80% of your profit. That's 64% of your business. Yes, that's right. When you apply the Pareto Principle one step further, you will find that 4% of your clients account for 64% of your business and profit. Those are the people you want to spend time with. And those are the people you want to get referrals from, the 4% of your clients who account for 64% of your profit. And by the way, the same holds true for salespeople. Did you know that 20% of salespeople, the top 20% of salespeople earn 80% of the money, and that 4% of salespeople make 64% of the money? These 4% of salespeople account for 64% of the firm's profit. That goes for every company in the world. Yes, 4% of salespeople account for 64% of the company's profit. Are you listening to me, sales managers? 4% of your salespeople account for 64% of your company's profits. These are the successful salespeople, the committed ones, the hard workers, the voracious learners, loyal to their company, loyal to their career, loyal to their clients and prospects and industry. These are the salespeople who are proud of their career, proud of their company, the relentless ones who get up early and get to work, the persistent ones who work late into the night when nobody else but them knows. These salespeople who love being a professional salesperson, those who identify as a successful salesperson, who when they are exhausted, make the extra sales call, or 5 more sales calls, or 20. The networkers, the salespeople who ask for the business, the salespeople who are prospecting and always learning how to provide better and better service for their clients, their prospects, how they can provide better service, how they can continue to learn more and more about their profession. These are the winners, like you and me, my brothers and sisters on the path to success in sales. The winners. Thank you, Vilfredo Pareto. Now get out there and sell.
We hope you found this episode of the Sellin' Podcast helpful and of interest. Please make sure to like, rate, and review. And mention this podcast to a friend or a business associate. Have a comment about this podcast? Have a topic you'd like Jeffrey to discuss? Feel free to contact Jeffrey directly at jeffrey@sellin.net. He'll read and review every one of your emails. That's Jeffrey at SELLN.net. .net as in networking for success in sales. Now, take what you've learned today and get out there and sell. See you next time on the Sellin' Podcast.